Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, back with another RE video. Haven't done one of these in quite some time, and this one is in response to the B18C video that I put out, which was the valve adjustment on the 2000 Acura GSR, or Honda GSR, depending upon where you're from. And there were a few things that kept coming up in the comments, and a lot of it was because I opened my big fat mouth about basically what a Type R was and the differences between that and the GSR, and maybe I should have left that out. So we're just going to address that in this video partially. But before I get to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other legitimate questions about valve adjustments themselves. And one of the biggest ones that comes up is, why aren't all cars like this? Well, there's two different types of valve trains. And when I say that, two different types of ways that you can work the valves. As you may know from the engine dissection video that I did, there's a camshaft, and basically it has little egg-shaped bumps that are on that camshaft. And as the engine rums, those bumps spin around and they push open mechanism, something in order to open and close the valves in the combustion chamber. And you need those valves to let fresh air and fuel in and then spent exhaust gases out. You also need them to seal the combustion chamber. So the way they do that is they do that with mechanical timing using cams. And there's a couple of different setups that they run. One is a hydraulic valve train. And what that means is the cam actually pushes on like a little mechanical cushion, let's call it. And it is just like a cushion. It's filled with oil. And every time that cam lobe comes up and pushes on that lifter, is what that's called, that's filled with oil, that oil sort of has a little bit of give to it, and then it opens the valve. But the upside to this is it makes it so that you don't need to adjust the valves. With hydraulic valves, with those oil-filled tappets, as some people call them, or lifters, as some people call them, with those, you don't need to do any kind of adjustment. So for the majority of cars that are out there that you're driving, you don't need to adjust the valves because they have a hydraulic valve train. If you start to hear valve noise on something like that, it usually means like maybe a loss of oil pressure, or the lifters themselves have worn out because that little cushion, that's two pieces of metal that can rub against each other, and clearances get big and oil pressure begins to leak out, and it doesn't necessarily perform as well as it did when it could hold pressure. Hence the reason you have to go in and replace those. And by the way, you need to replace cams and lifters as a set. You can't just throw a set of lifters on an old cam because you'll ruin the lifters. You can't just put a cam with old lifters. Yeah, you can't use a cam with old lifters because they'll ruin each other. They're machined to work together, and we'll get into how those work in another video because they're actually supposed to spin those lifters, the cam lobe, every time it comes up. The majority of vehicles out there do not require valve adjustments. Why do Hondas require valve adjustments? Well, there are a lot of Hondas, not all Hondas, but there are a lot of Hondas out there that run a solid valve train. And a solid valve train means that they don't have that oil-filled cushion that's in between the cam lobe and pushing open whatever is pushing open the valves. They just have a direct connection. In fact, that's what you saw in the very video that I'm talking about. You're looking at that direct connection, that rocker, I hesitated to call it that, or follower, as it's set up. But that cam lobe pushes directly on there. There's no hydraulic anything in between there. So what happens over time there is the same thing that happens with hydraulic lifters. Hydraulic lifters will wear out over time, the same way those cam lobes coming into contact with those rockers or followers over time will wear a little bit. And as a result of that wear, you're going to need to compensate for that, and you can compensate for that. So unlike in a hydraulic valve train where you'd have to go in and replace the cam and lifters, all you need to do with a solid valve train is make an adjustment. The other thing about the solid valve train is the valve timing is more accurate. Some people are going to say, some people may disagree with me, whatever, but instead of having that hydraulic cushion which puts the valve clearance just about anywhere within a given range, it's a direct connection. So every time there is that amount of clearance. So every time you know you're going to be opening that valve that given amount. So that's the difference between the two. And that's one of the main things I wanted to speak to in this video. And that was about those key differences between those types of valve trains. So if you look up under the hood of your car and you look at that sticker and you don't see anything that says valve lash adjustment, don't worry about it. One last thing I'll talk about on valve adjustments is there are some other engines out there that do require them, and they may require them with the valve train being hot. So that may be important because when the metal gets hotter, it expands, the clearances are going to be different. They're going to be affected by that heat. So some you have to adjust when they're hot. And some you don't adjust just by twisting an adjuster. Some you have to go in and put different size shims in. That can be a lot of fun. So you have to measure the existing clearance, compare it to spec, either subtract or add the amount of space that you need in order to take up that slack in order to get you within spec. And then you have to purchase parts that are of the correct size to fit in there. Big pain in the butt. Not often done on some vehicles, but Hondas are nice enough to give us like those easy adjustments. But that I hope clears up that about the differences between a hydraulic valve train and a solid valve train. So for those of you watching, wondering how can I adjust my valves, most likely you won't unless you're driving that particular vehicle. What happens if you don't adjust the valves? Well, if you don't adjust the valves, not much. And I'm going to be honest, not much. In fact, not adjusting them in many ways may be better than adjusting them. I put these videos out to show you what my procedure was and how to adjust them. However, just to give you an idea, like at the dealership, we were doing them every 15,000 miles. And mainly that was so that we could bring up the cost of those services, get more labor out of them. And that wasn't just me, that was the dealership that was doing that. Then they stopped doing that, and they started doing it at 30,000 mile intervals. And then they stopped doing that, and then they started saying only when noisy, which could be 100,000 miles or more. Hence the TL, the J series valve adjustment video that we did. That was 100,000 miles-ish that we adjusted those valves. So you can go a good bit of time before a valve adjustment is required. And when you might need it, is you might hear the valve train getting a little noisy. You might hear that. As far as a compromise in performance, personally, I haven't seen that. Personally, the only time I've seen performance and valve adjustment cause an issue is when they get way, way out. And normally 9 times out of 10, that's because somebody's gone in there and has not adjusted the valves correctly from the beginning. That's what I would normally see. So as far as like needing to do it, no. It's like a fine-tuning thing. It's like I said in the video, it's the cherry on top of a tune-up. It helps smooth out the engine operation because everything's consistent. When things are inconsistent in an engine, it doesn't like it. Engines are OCD. They just need consistency all the time. You got to think of the operations that they perform in a given second, and they all need to be precise and in time. There you have it with that. I hope that answers that question. So as far as how often, these days, just when noisy is on most Hondas. Even on the older Hondas, you could probably just wait till they're noisy. And lastly, let's talk about the Type R. I was not correct in the horsepower of a stock GSR. Many of you pointed out that a stock GSR puts out somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 brake horsepower, I believe at the flywheel, not at the wheels, at the flywheel. So that's an important distinction. And as far as the internals, what you could change to make a poor man's Type R, I was also off in that. That was not exactly correct in that they also beefed up the bottom end and used different connecting rods and things down there and a special crankshaft to make that, I believe it's a B18C5 is the block that is used in a Type R. So if you're in the junkyard and you look at the block number and you see a B18C5, grab it and run. Somebody probably already has though, come on. They didn't make a whole lot of these things. Oh, and here's the other thing. Yes, they do make 4-door GSRs. Yes, they do. Here's a picture of one, right there. There's a picture of a 4-door GSR. They made 4-door GSRs. They did not make automatics on the GSR. Somebody said that they might have done it back in Japan. They never did it here in the States, I'll say that. I've never seen an automatic GSR in the States. You're gonna eat up 40 horsepower and no, I don't see that happening. However, I do have something that can put this all to bed, and that is this. This is the 1997 service manual supplement for the Type R, and it has all of this information in it. And I'll just read briefly for you here. For the 1997 model year, Acura has introduced a special high-performance limited edition Integra Sport Coupe, the Integra Type R. Like the new 1997 NSX, the Integra Type R features numerous technological innovations that maximize performance and handling and provide high levels of safety, durability, and efficiency. Somebody in the PR department wrote that. But this, more important, the Integra Type R is powered by a special B18C5, 195 horsepower, 1.8 liter, dual overhead cam, 16 valve VTEC inline 4-cylinder engine. This engine puts out more horsepower than per liter than any other normally aspirated mass-produced car in the US. At that time, that was correct. And the features that are unique to the Type R are hand-polished intake and exhaust ports, and a single port intake manifold. So unlike the GSR that had the two-stage, we talked about two-stage intakes, it had just a straight intake. It didn't have a two-stage intake. Why? Remember? High RPM operation, that's right. Because that's what they're doing with this engine. They're spinning the heck out of it. So, rather than going through all the specifics on this, and one thing that I'd forgotten about, they actually lightened the ABS in this car to make it a little faster. They lightened different parts of the body. They stiffened different parts of the body. But what's great about this book is it goes through like line by line. It goes through the body, it goes through the transmission and the limited slip differential that it has, the different gear ratios that it has over a GSR, absolutely everything. Is every single difference between a GSR and a Type R. So rather than sitting here reading this entire thing for you on camera, what I've done is I've created a PDF of this. And along with the discussion about this video, which you'll find below, you will also find that PDF. So you can go over to my website, EricTheCarGuy.com, and you follow that link and you can read all about the differences between a Type R and a regular GSR. Just try to put that information in your hands because I was wrong and many of you were wrong. So let's all be right and get on the page with the manufacturer. Now, the later model Integras, this is for the 1997 model year, and I believe they only made it from 97 through 2000 is the only years that they made a Type R. And I think in 1 year there, they didn't make it. I think they just ran the same production. I can't remember, there was some issue there. But these are unique. And in fact, I personally believe they're one of the best cars that Honda ever made, the Type R that is. And it's not because of the engine. The engine, yes, is a solid engine. It runs really great, but like most Hondas, in my opinion, they don't have any bottom end torque, so they don't really start making any power till you get close to that red line. So the best one that I ever worked on was that one that you've seen in other videos that had the supercharger on it. I think that's a brilliant solution to the bottom end torque problem, if you want to call it that, with this engine. However, it does limit your high end input. So that's the thing with a supercharger, you get power instantaneously off the line, but once you get up into higher RPMs, it actually starts to limit the amount of flow that can go into the engine. All that aside, I think the car was great because it was way more balanced. I had a 97 GSR for a little while, drove it around, loved the car. The differences with the Type R, the biggest differences that I noticed were in the handling and the braking. The braking was outstanding. And I think what they did with those brakes, I'm going out on a limb again here, I think what they did with those brakes is they took brakes off of like, I think the TL or something like that, the 5-low TL, and they put them on this car. So they put brakes off of a larger car and they put them on this car, and they worked excellent. Also, they stiffened the body. All this is in that PDF, which I'm not going to take up any more of your time with this RE video, but we can discuss it over there at the forum, over at EricTheCarGuy.com, where you can find me. And you can also find me on Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus if you so desire. But if you want to talk about this, link in the description to the forum post about this RE video, this here video. I've been basically posting links over at the forum for the videos I've been doing lately. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy, and I close with be safe, have fun, and of course, stay dirty. And by the way, if you have any automotive questions, feel free to sign up for our forum. It's free to sign up for, and you can just ask your questions over there, and we will all jump in to try to help solve your automotive issues. But before you do that, try the search function. Type in a couple of keywords, top of the homepage. Never know what you might come up with. You might come up with an answer like right now. So don't forget about the search. Eric the Car Guy, be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. I will see you next time.